I originally started this video just as a kind of straightforward review of this, which is the new Jabba the Hutt action playset from Hasbro Pulse. People have been starting to receive that after ordering it on HasbroPulse.com close to a year ago, which I think we'll probably talk about a little bit later. But as I was talking about this set, I kept coming back to making comparisons with this one here in the background, and that is the Walmart-exclusive one from 2010. This, I believe, is usually referred to as a vintage collection Jabba playset as well, so it's a little difficult to distinguish between the two, but this is the one that most people probably would call the Walmart Jabba. And the reason for that is that, aside from the original Jabba playset, the original 1983 action playset, from Kenner, there have only ever been two now playsets that actually I would consider to be complete Jabba playsets, and by that I mean they include a throne, a railing, a Jabba figure, and, ideally some other figure as well. But Jabba and his throne and the railing are kind of the main three things for you to have an actual Jabba display. And so this one here, which has just come out, is, as I say, just the second one we really had in a modern Star Wars line. So I thought making this video would actually make more sense if I did it as a comparison between these two, especially because I think there are quite a few people who already have this one, and maybe they're wondering, well, is it worth upgrading to this? Or maybe you're brand new to collecting Star Wars somehow, and you want to know which one you should get on the secondary market. This one, unfortunately, despite having been sold online a few, 10, 11 months ago, it's no longer available, so if you want it, you're going to have to get it on the secondary market as well. So yeah, that's the plan. I'm going to review this set, but also kind of compare it to this one, and I guess maybe in some sense re-review this one. Now, I did review this guy, which again came out in 2010. I did that about, I think, 8 years ago on the channel. I can't believe, as a little side note, I can't believe that I have videos that are like 8 and 9 years old now. I actually have multiple people, message me and say things like, oh, I used to watch your videos all the time when I was a kid, and then naturally I crumbled away to dust because that just makes me feel really old, but also it's really cool and I really do appreciate it. So yeah, a little bit of complex emotions there, but I did, as I say, reviewed this quite some time ago. Now, I think I'm not entirely sure if I even have an unmodified version of this playset anymore, because I originally used it, I repainted it, and I did a bunch of other things to the throne and to the Jabba figure itself. So what I'm going to do, I thought this would be kind of interesting. This is actually an unopened one from 2010 that I've had in my collection on display ever since then. And I think what I'm going to do is open this up, and we'll see what it's like inside, what the unboxing experience is like for both of these. And then we'll compare them and see which one is better. In case you haven't already noticed, this is going to be kind of a long and involved video, but I will put some chapter markers in it, so you can feel free to skip around. If, for example, you're more interested in the new set than the old one, then you can just sort of skip to that section. So I want to go ahead and open this Walmart set up and refresh my memory of, just what was included, and also allow us to make a fair comparison between them. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and look at the box itself. I really like this artwork. I think it's really well done. I think it's a cool painting, a digital-looking painting, but also, has Oola very prominently featured there in the center, which is kind of maybe a little bit of a risky move. I don't know if they do that today, but I'm glad that they did, and I'm glad that they included Oola as the bonus or, main included figure. As it says here, only at Walmart. This is a sticker. These were actually sold at Amazon. I'm not entirely sure if it was Walmart through Amazon or whatever. It was released originally at $35 or $34.97, I guess, with Walmart's weird pricing. But they did put it on clearance. I got a couple for $19, I think. And then I even heard of people who found them for $9, although I never found that. $35, at the time, trying to remember what people thought. It seems like a really good deal to me, to be honest with you, especially with the benefit of hindsight. $35 for everything you're going to see here is pretty insane, especially given the price that individual figures are going for now. If we turn this around, you can see there's a picture of the included toys and everything, and all their features. Throne with rolling wheels, and Jabba's tail is posable. Well, we'll see about that. I'll also warn you, I think I've mentioned this in the original video, but also it's kind of common knowledge that this particular Jabba figure has some real problems with deterioration over time because of the materials they used for his body section here. And he gets sticky and gross, and I'm assuming that the Jabba in here will be that way, even though I have never taken it out of the box, because it just gets gross over time. You can... Well, the best thing to do about that is to replace the entire body section with the body section from a vintage Jabba figure, which I've talked about in a video you can see right here. But failing that, you can try and repaint it. It's difficult to know, though, because the stickiness can come through the paint, even if you do that. So, short of just totally stripping the paint, which may be what you'd have to do to get it really, really clean, it's going to be difficult. That's the biggest, spoiler alert, the biggest problem with this particular figure is that. All right, let us go ahead and open this sucker up. This is kind of exciting. I'm going to go ahead and break the seal. And if I can open it without destroying anything, that would be nice. Come on. There we go. So it's got a sliding tray inside it, like that, with various things neatly apportioned there. They're, pretty well packaged. Oola herself, as you can see, is separate, and she's actually kind of attached to the box in a way, so to get her out of there is a relatively destructive thing. Let's see how Jabba has fared after 14 years. Is he all sticky and gross? Oh my god. Oh yeah, he is. Well, I was like, I touched one part and it seemed okay, but no, I don't know if you can see, my fingers are all shiny, where it has been sort of oozing something over the years. So unfortunately, yeah, it has not escaped the Jabba curse, the Walmart Jabba curse. We have the throne, the railing, Salacious, and the hookah, and then some various pillows and things that you can put on the throne as well. Let's go ahead and look at each part individually. By the way, all of these are secured in here with these wonderful paper twisty tie type things. Yeah, they're a pain, but at least it does keep things relatively secure. Alright, let's take a look at each of the parts included in this set. This is, of course, the throne, which is on wheels, as you can see. I'm not totally sure that that's a good thing. It's not. I mean, in certain circumstances, it might be convenient to be able to slide it back and forth, but you also have to be a little bit careful, because it does slide pretty easily on these wheels, and if you have everything set up just right, you might mess it up if you're not careful. On the bottom here, it does have some generic detailing. I mean, it's just not just totally blank, and in fact, these look like metal plates of some kind with rivets on them, but they're very kind of low detail, but still, I guess it's better than nothing. You're not really going to be looking at the bottom of the throne that often. On the top, we have some nice texture, stone texture, that's been brought out with a wash on top, and I think they did a good job with that. Here are the gargoyles, and that's basically where I have my only real issue with this throne, is that, first of all, they're way too small looking for the size of the throne. I feel like they should be close to double this size, especially the size of the rings seems about right, but the heads themselves are way too small. I don't really know how this actually got through the approval process. It just seems weird that they went with this size. But, you know, it is what it is. There's also no kind of weathering or corrosion effect that you often get on the Thrones. In fact, there's not really even a metallic effect on it. It's just sort of a blackish color. So it's not fantastic in that sense. Yeah, that's about it for this. No real extra paint or weathering aside from what we have here on the top, but it's not bad. Now, one place where this really does shine, though, is in terms of the accessories that you got. You got a bunch of pillows, and if you look at these, you can see that they are nicely sculpted, and they're made out of plastic. So, you know, you just place them where you want them to go, and you don't have to worry about, like, posing them exactly. If they were actual, you know, small-scale pillows, that might be a little tricky. And a few of them even have, like, posed edges that are going up so that they look like they might be leaning up against something. So I do like that. We also have this animal skin, I guess it is, that's supposed to go on the side of the throne, somewhere like this. Well, maybe like that, I don't know. You know, this one seems to be a little bit misshapen. There we go. So, you know, you can just arrange these as you like. I won't put them all on because we don't have Jabba on there yet, but you get the point. We also have the railing, which is essentially the same, I guess, as has been included in some previous ones like the so-called Ultra Jabba. I think this is pretty much the same, although it does have a decent weathering job here. It does look like they put a little effort into it. That just sort of sits on the top. And then in this little baggie here, we have Salacious and the actual hookah pipe. If I can get him out of here. Now this Salacious crumb, I believe, was originally included with a C-3PO figure together, and so it's a little bit odd, the pose that they've chosen for him, because he was originally intended to kind of cling to C-3PO, and this hand would be trying to get his eyeball out, and, you know, it's a little weird. Also, I feel maybe too big and too... what's the word? His limbs are a little bit too big around. You know, he looks a little bit weirdly proportioned, but not a bad figure. And he has a lot of good articulation, so you can see you can actually move this up and down and around. It's not just a cut joint. Several of his joints allow for some reasonably good posing, including his head and his tail. So overall, I would say this is a good representation of Salacious. We can put him, maybe we'll put him on one of these pillows. I'm not sure if they had a particular one in mind for him. It is a little difficult to get him to properly sit on it. Maybe you want to put it on the side. So here is the included Oola figure. She's got a long sort of tether attached to her. Now this is probably the figure that was most in demand from this set, not including Jabba himself, because they had not made a modern Oola with good articulation and, you know, a good sculpt and everything up until this point. So it wasn't unusual for this figure to go for quite a bit of money on its own. I noticed something, however, that I was not aware of. It's probably common knowledge, but this figure is starting to deteriorate as well. This is straight out of the package, and there's a little, I guess, rubber thing that's kind of meant to be holding her loincloth in place. I don't know if you can see. It goes from here, and there was a piece just a second ago that was coming out here, and just like this on this side. But if I just gently, look at that, it just broke right off. It is totally crumbling to pieces. And so that's a little bit of an issue with this figure. You're going to have to, I think you could fairly easily replace this with you know, a modern rubber band or something along those lines. Just get a black rubber band and put it around her. It'll be just fine, but it's something to keep in mind and something I hadn't realized was an issue with this figure. Otherwise, it's a really good figure. I'm a fan of the Oola character, and it's definitely the best figure that's been made of her. And it's just nice that they included it with this set, especially because we're probably not going to see another one of these figures in the near future, if ever. So this is the one you'd want if you want a 3 3/4 inch scale Oola figure, barring some kind of custom. Of course, we have to look at Jabba himself. I probably won't go into as much detail as I did in my previous review of this set, but suffice it to say that I think this is an excellent Jabba sculpt at its heart. Especially this head section looks really cool, and it seems more accurate and more representative of the character even than most of the other sculpts that we've gotten. Unfortunately, they decided to go with this kind of hollow, I don't know, it's kind of like a glove or something that goes, it's a sleeve that goes over just a wire skeleton underneath that is meant to be his quote-unquote posable tail. And actually, as I think I showed in the other video, I mean, it really doesn't look that great. Even if you try and pose it, it gets all weirdly wrinkled and whatnot, so you're better off probably just leaving it as it is. And of course, it has the unfortunate side effect of just getting extremely gross over time. It's all kind of wet feeling and sticky right now. I'm going to have to wash my hands after I do this. A little unfortunate there, but otherwise quite good. He does have nice articulation for a Jabba figure, tail aside. He's even got his tail scar and his tattoo. So it's a good figure, even though I do feel like his body is not in proportion to the rest of his head here. I think he should be considerably taller than this, so he looks weirdly squat. But for a long time anyway, this was considered to be the best Jabba figure, and I can see why. So here we have the full set on display, and as I mentioned earlier, for $35, $40, this was quite a good deal at the time. If you're buying it in 2024, you have to take into account that prices on the secondary market have gone up quite a bit, plus we have the problem with the deterioration that I've mentioned. I have done a few things since I saw you last to try and fix that a little bit, and one is for Oola here, I just took a little bit of fishing line. You could use just thread as well, and then kind of restrung her outfit so it wouldn't be hanging open. That wasn't too difficult. And then I also, for Jabba here, cut a piece of clear plastic, just from like a Ziploc bag, and I put it underneath him so that he wouldn't be in direct contact with the throne and would not leave his little slime trail on the throne. Potentially, I think over time it might actually ruin the paint, or at least, who knows what's going to happen over time. So I just would prefer not to have him in direct contact. But otherwise, you can't really see it, and I think it looks okay. The main thing is, if you're going to be wanting something that you actually play with and pose a lot, this is not an ideal choice, just because you're going to get your hands dirty doing that. If it's just for display, this is actually a decent option. I do think this is a great looking Jabba, generally speaking. Not perfect by any means, but still pretty good. Now, I did mention earlier that you could take the vintage Jabba's body and put it on him. Take the head from the Walmart Jabba and replace it. That is to say, replace the body using the same head, and that's what this is. If you wanted to sort of see the comparison, I do think this is a better look, frankly. He sits up higher, and the two halves, once you've painted them, don't really seem like a mismatch, in my opinion. And you still retain the cool, tail wagging feature, which is way better than the tail posing feature that they tried to put into this guy. So that's an option, I guess. But yeah, overall, this is a good set, but there is another. This is the new Jabba the Hutt action playset from Hasbro. It was a Hasbro Pulse exclusive, and I ordered this about a year ago, actually. It's kind of crazy how long it took for this to come out, especially when you consider that the Bib Fortuna Throne Room playset, which I think this is kind of meant to complement in a way, came out about 10 months ago. So, you know, I don't know what the logic is there. But in any case, this is the latest Jabba playset, Jabba figure to come out, so naturally I was very interested in getting it. Although it is essentially, well, we'll go over the differences and things later on, but it's largely the same as what has already been released in other forms, and so it's not super exciting in that sense, but still, it's always nice to see a new Jabba toy on the market. Unfortunately, this, I think, is sold out online, so you're going to have to go to the secondary market if you want to get hold of one of these. As I say, I ordered it about a year ago, maybe 11 months ago, and just got mine very recently. Now, this comes in a box similar to the other releases that Hasbro has been releasing, and you know, it looks pretty good. I do kind of not like the large amounts of text all over it in various languages. I mean, nothing against having it in other languages exactly, but it's not quite as clean looking. This is actually the front of the package too. If we turn it around, you can see there's even more text back there. But aside from that, it is an attractive looking package, nice photos on it, and as you can see, it says it includes 8D8 and Salacious Become figures, which is pretty cool. But I'm probably most interested in seeing how this Jabba here looks compared to the other ones that they have released. So let's go ahead and open this up, I guess, and we'll see what is actually inside. So we pull out this cardboard tray, and here we have Jabba right away in a little plastic baggie, which we will take a look at in more detail in just a moment. He's also got a little bag of accessories for the throne, I guess, and here is the throne railing. The railing, of course, is one of the main things that was missing from that Bib Fortuna Throne Room set, aside from Jabba himself, and was one of the sticking points if you wanted to use that as a Jabba throne room instead of like Boba Fett or Bib Fortuna. Here we have Salacious Crumb on card. Now, I'll admit that I had forgotten that these figures were going to come carded, and I only ordered one of these sets, and now I'm in a little bit of a quandary because I don't think I want to open these carded figures, but I also don't want to not have the figures open. We'll have to come back later in the video and see what I decide, but it's a nice little carded Salacious Crumb. Reminds me of one they released quite a while ago as an SDCC exclusive. And of course we also have 8D8 also on a card. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is a new version of this character. There he is. He is, of course, the torture droid who's torturing the poor gonk droid there in the palace. And finally, we have the throne, or dais, however you want to say it, itself, which I will be comparing to the one from the Boba Fett or Bib Fortuna throne room a little bit later on. But, you know, first glance, looks pretty good, actually. I think the paint job is pretty nice, looks reasonably authentic. There's some parts here where there's not really as much weathering, but that's going to be covered up anyway by Jabba and the railing, so I'm not really too concerned about it. And of course, we have all this awesome detail on the bottom with wheels as well, so you can have little throne races if you so desire. So, I guess we should go ahead and look at Jabba, since he's the one that a lot of people are going to be really interested to see. Alright, well, now I think I read that this was supposed to have, improved paint. They're, super realistic paint. So let's see how that pans out. I'm going to have to get him in focus here. Well, so it's a bit of a mixed bag in my opinion, just off the top of my head here. I do think, generally, it looks pretty good. The eyes are much better than the eyes on the previous versions of this figure. As I said, this is essentially just a re-release, a repaint of one figure that's been released a couple times before, once in a Toys R Us exclusive Rancor Pit set. That was its first appearance, as I recall. And then once in the sail barge itself, the giant Hasbro sail barge, they did another version with a slightly different paint job. This one, I mean, just generally speaking, I guess it does look better to me. But what is up with this shading here? It looks extremely weird and sloppy. I don't understand what they were going for there. I think, this one area was a little bit stuck. I feel like they went a little too heavy-handed there. It's a little bit too dark, and obviously done kind of with a brush in 2 seconds. So that's unfortunate. It would look much better, I think, without this. Otherwise, I think it looks quite good. Even these eyes, I think, looked great. Especially in comparison with what we had before, which again, I'll show you a comparison in just a minute. But first impressions, not too bad, but what the heck is this stuff? I thought we should probably start by comparing the 3 different versions of this figure that have been released up until now. Just for context, if you're unaware, these are a shrunken down version of this large 6-inch Black Series figure that I've reviewed in the past. They also resculpted a little bit, changed some things about it, but it's essentially the same figure, just shrunk down to the 3 3/4 inch scale. So originally, they released this one. This was with the Toys R Us exclusive Jabba's Rancor Pit set that came with the Rancor and some other figures in a nice kind of Rancor Pit box. And so this was the first time this figure had appeared, and it's got a relatively simple paint job. I think at the time I kind of made fun of it for this weird shading in his nostrils, making it look like he has a little bit of a mustache or something. And also this drool seems a little simplistic, just kind of like lines. But generally speaking, honestly, this is a pretty nice looking figure. It's got a simple, clean paint job, I guess I'd say. And I actually like it pretty well. The next one they made was this one here, which was for the HasLab sail barge. This one is basically just a repaint. Well, they're all just repaints, but this is a repaint of that original one that was supposed to be, much nicer somehow, supposed to be upgraded paint. And I will say, it's a little better in some ways. I would say probably the eyes are better, although it's a little bit of a toss-up. They did get rid of the unnatural-looking drool and cleaned up his nostrils a little bit. I will say, though, they kind of went a little heavy on the, I guess, wash here, kind of shading. Looks, I don't know, looks kind of dirty to me, which I guess is appropriate for Jabba, but somehow it doesn't quite look enough like Jabba to me. Just, this part, I feel like it's a little off looking, but, not a bad figure, I guess. And then finally we have, of course, this one here, which we just unboxed. It has very similar look on the body in terms of the detail here being, brought out by a wash. And then they've gone ahead and added, of course, the shading here, which I'm not a fan of at all. However, I should say that if you have it at a decent distance, like 3 or 4 feet away or something like that, it looks fine. Like, it's not that obvious. It's only when you're looking at it kind of within maybe a foot. If you have it in your hand, you can see that this is just a sloppy, paint job. Doesn't look very realistic as shading, unfortunately. I will say also, though, in terms of the eyes, I think these are the best eyes on any of these figures. If you look and compare the two here, this one here is much more simplistic looking, just lines basically, whereas this one, maybe the red is a little too dark, but the actual details of the eye, I think, are pretty good. So, which of these would I choose if I could only have one of them on display? Unfortunately, I'm going to have to go with this original one. And I'm kind of surprised that I'm saying this, to be honest with you. But it really looks nice and clean. It's a fairly simple paint job. It's a brighter paint job. Maybe it looks more toy-like somehow. I don't know. But to me, I actually prefer this one. I will also mention, you see this on his stomach. I don't really understand what they were going for with this detail here, this paint on his tummy. They have a very subtle version of it here, which I think looks much better. And then on the sail barge one, it looks like that. But they just got progressively heavier-handed with it, and it looks like he's, rotting away or something, or he's got a bruise on his stomach. Not a fan of that really at all. So I don't know. I would say it's a bit of a toss-up between this one and the sail barge one, because they both have good and bad parts to them. One other thing, minor detail I wanted to mention, is if you turn them over, you can see that there is copyright information here on his bottom. This is the original version, and then if we look at the sail barge version, it's basically the same. A couple of the numbers are different, but, basically the same information there, same look. And if we take this one, there's just a big blank patch where they've wiped all that away, which I think is interesting. Like, there's no copyright information on this Jabba at all now that I'm looking at it. That's actually pretty surprising. I'm not really sure what prompted that, but something to keep in mind, especially if you ever need to tell these apart. These are the accessories that you get with the new set. Probably one of the most important is the railing and the hookah pipe, which is a separate piece that you can remove, as is often the case with this kind of accessory. Looks nice. I like, the way they've used transparent plastic, and you can also remove the bowl if you want to put the little froggy snack that they've included for Jabba's dining pleasure into the bowl. You can do that. So we'll go ahead and do that for now. Put that back on there, and then of course it slides into the railing. And I will say the railing is nice. It looks good. Nicely, I don't even know if it's actually painted or if this is just the color of the plastic, but it looks, looks reasonably realistic as metal. And to compare it with what I've been using up until now in the Boba Fett throne room set, we have this, which is, similar, obviously, but not as long or big, I guess you'd say. It doesn't extend as much of the length of the throne, which I like the new one better. I also like the look of this transparent hookah hose much better than the one that I was using before. This is from the what is this from? 2010. I guess this is from the Walmart Jabba set. I had to check to remember. But in any case, I really do think that the new one is better, and I don't really see any reason to continue using the old one. It also comes with some animal skins that you can drape over the throne. These are made of some kind of non-woven fabric, I guess. Kind of like a microfiber cloth type feel. And then you also get some soft goods pillows, which I think is a first for a Jabba throne, now that I'm thinking about it. Actual fabric-y feeling pillows. They seem to be created by having a couple of pieces of kind of, you know, it's kind of like Velcro, the non-plasticky part, the fabric-y part of Velcro that have been heat sealed together. They look okay. Personally, I think I would rather go with sculpted ones that have some detail on them instead of just these squares and rectangles, but it's nice to have them in any case. We also get 3 goblets like that, and 1 plate that has some food on it. So I wanted to compare these to what you got with the Boba Fett's throne room set, so I went and got all of my accessories for that, and here they are. I just have a big pile of them. You can see you get a heck of a lot more accessories with that set than you do with the new one, but that's to be expected, of course. I'm also not including, of course, the chair that goes on the throne or the rotisserie barbecue, but these are just sort of individual things that you can kind of place all over the place wherever you want them to go. You can see there are some overlaps, so like this one on the left is from the old set, and this one on the right is from the new one. They're essentially the same, just slightly different colors. Similarly, we have this being the the goblet from the old set, and the one from the new one. Very slightly different in color. I don't know if you can even tell, but interestingly, you only got 1 of these with the original set. You got several different kinds of drinking vessels, but you do get 3 of them with the new one. You did not get any pillows with the old set because it was not intended to be used as a Jabba throne room, and I guess that's sort of a hallmark of the Jabba throne, is to have a bunch of pillows on it. But yeah, I mean, essentially, oh, I should also compare these two. Quite different in color, the old one and the new one. We should also look at the thrones. These are essentially the same thing, but with some minor differences. The most obvious being, of course, the color. This is the color of the plastic that's different. This one on top here is the Boba Fett's throne room version, which is more of a brownish color, and this one on the bottom, the new one, is a bit more gray, but they're both basically a tan, different shades of tan. I don't really know necessarily which one is more accurate. Either one can work, in my opinion. There are some other differences, though. This one from the Boba Fett's throne room does have nice, even weathering across it, and it looks pretty good, honestly. As I mentioned earlier, though, the new version, at least mine, is kind of missing a swath of weathering here. They, for whatever reason, didn't apply it evenly across the top. Not a huge deal, because you're going to literally be covering all of this up anyway, I think, so I'm not that upset about it, but it is a little strange. If we look on the bottom, you can see both of them have the same thing, the kind of machinery, faux machinery under there, and some wheels for your throne racing pleasure. But yeah, basically these are exactly the same thing. The other difference is the throne gargoyles. I'd say that the paint job on the gargoyles is pretty similar. The weathering, or I guess you'd say, the corrosion or patina on these gargoyle heads, if we can get it to focus, is a little heavier, in my case, on the older one, and you can't see it quite as well on the new one, but they both have it. The other thing I was going to mention too is this kind of dripping effect where you have, like, I don't know, rust or corrosion dripping down underneath is subtler on the new one for me than on the old one. In fact, I actually quite like the older one's version, if we can compare them both at the same time. This is more heavy-handed. Looks kind of like they've just taken a brush and, you know, dry brushed it a little bit, which I think is exactly what they did. But here they've gone a little bit more strategic with it. It's more subtle, and I actually prefer that. But in terms of the thrones, I don't really see any huge differences. So either one would work in my opinion. But yeah, to compare these, there's actually not very much overlap. I was a little surprised. I intentionally hadn't gone back to kind of study what each of these included, just so I could be surprised. And I was actually kind of surprised that they didn't just like reuse half of this stuff and give it to you here. A lot of this is new, or, you know, sort of semi-new anyway. But you don't get a whole lot of it, it's true. But to be fair, you're really only expected to put this stuff on the throne itself and not around an entire palace, so I guess it's okay. What I want to do now, though, is to first look at the figures that this comes with, aside from Jabba, and then we'll see how everything looks like when it's actually on the throne. So the first figure we're going to look at is this carded Salacious B. Crumb. This, if you have been collecting Jabba stuff for a while, may remind you of something, and that is this, which was a version of the previous Salacious Crumb figure that they released on a card as an SDCC exclusive, I believe, in around 2011-ish. You can see it says Revenge of the Jedi. It was part of a big Death Star set of figures that they released there at SDCC. And up until this came out, this was the only, I think, carded version of Salacious Crumb that had been released, but now we have two. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this has put me in a bit of a quandary because I kind of want to keep this guy on the card, but I also want to have one to open. But I think what I'm going to do is just bite the bullet and open this one, maybe try and, you know, get a carded one later on down the road. It may not really be necessary. It's just, you know, how it is. I will try and open this in a controlled manner so that I can, you know, not totally ruin the card. But looking at it here before we open it, you can see there's just a dramatic difference in, well, everything really. Size, the scale. This one here looks kind of a lot more, I guess, cartoony. And of course his limbs and everything are much thicker. This one here, a lot more delicate looking, especially in person. When I first took this out of the package, I was like, wow, this guy, he's got some thin arms and legs, and also his ears are quite delicate. I don't know how well this would actually fare as a toy that you, or kids anyway, would play with, but I think just in terms of the appearance, it looks much better than the previous version. So let's go ahead and get him out of the package and see what he looks like. So here he is. I think this is a really nice looking Salacious Crumb. Definitely the most in-scale seeming, I guess, relative to Jabba of any of the Salacious Crumbs that have been made. His arms and legs and tail are a lot thinner, and, you know, also his ears as well look a lot more realistic in scale than this one. I will say, though, that when it comes to articulation, this one is probably easier to pose. It's got thick legs and arms, so you can move them around pretty easily. It's got more joints as well. This one here is basically just cut joints. You can sort of articulate. You're actually, what you're doing for the most part is just relying on the rubberiness of his limbs to give you a little bit of articulation, but there's not a whole lot, although he can turn at the waist, and, you know, theoretically he can move his arms and legs and also his head, which is nice, but it's a little hard to get him to maintain any particular pose. I should also mention one thing. Generally speaking, on both of these, the paint is fine. However, if we look closely at Salacious Crumb's face, we can see a couple of things. One is that the nose area has this kind of gradient effect, which they use on some of their figures that have this, you know, kind of super realistic paint, so-called. I don't know, I think it looks okay. You got to understand how small this is in person. It's difficult to see any of these details, even just a foot away from me. The other thing is, if you look at his eyes, this particular example's eyes, they are not quite lined up properly. One of them is a little wonky. But again, if I look at it just from, less than a foot away here as I stand, I cannot see that this one is a little wonky. It's only if I blow it up on screen or if I take a photo of it that it looks bad. So I'm not really too upset about that. Generally speaking, though, yeah, I would definitely choose this one in favor of this one. So here we have 8D8 outside of his package. Now, I think this is probably kind of an optical illusion of some kind, because I'm used to this figure, which is the vintage figure. He's much beefier looking and taller, and his head is bigger, but this guy seems really long and thin and kind of spindly looking. But, if you look at the actual photo, his head is actually very thin. So I imagine this is actually probably a little bit more accurate, but anyway, it seems like a decent version of the character. Not, like, amazingly different, if I'm honest. You could, I think, still substitute the vintage 8D8 on a modern figure display, and it wouldn't be that strange, because he has essentially exactly, well, it is exactly the same articulation, I think. Maybe this head doesn't turn, I'm not sure. I'm a little reluctant to try it too hard, but basically the same articulation on the modern and the vintage figure. So about the only difference is this slimmer sculpt and slightly better paint. We do have a little bit of weathering going on there on the paint on his chest, for example, but yeah, it's not a huge difference. The thing, of course, is that it's a little strange to include him in this set at all, because he was never anywhere near the throne room, but at least he is a Jabba's Palace character, so it's nice to get a new version of him. So if we're going to make a comparison between these two sets, I think it makes sense to kind of divide them up by categories, because they have the same essential components in both of these. We have Jabba himself, we have his throne, we have Salacious Crumb, the pack-in character, whether it be Oola or 8D8, and then we have throne accessories, things to go on top of the throne. And so I'd like to go through and kind of grade these, see which one I feel is superior, and then maybe we can figure out which one of these is actually the best. So looking at Jabba, I know a lot of people really like this figure, and actually I'm among them. I think it is possibly the best Jabba sculpt we've gotten, especially, looking back in hindsight. I feel like this one here, I don't know, it looks a little bit oddly, I don't know if I want to say stylized or, cleaned up too much. It doesn't quite ring true to Jabba for me, and also seems a little small. Now, I know the size of Jabba is kind of a contentious thing, but it does seem kind of small here on the throne, especially when you're seeing him next to this one. His head in particular seems kind of tiny, although I guess you can argue that his head over here on the left is too big. That's why I went with this one here, kind of get the best of both worlds. But anyway, I'm going to go with this guy. I actually prefer the paint job on him as well. Unfortunately, as I've said, it's got this huge weakness, this huge problem in that it is, made of this material that just does not age well. And so we can't just totally ignore that. As far as I know, these newer Jabbas are not going to experience that kind of problem, because they're not made of that kind of very kind of soft, rubbery material. So, yeah, it's a bit of a toss-up, but I'm going to have to go with, if we're going between these two, this one here, the older Jabba. As I said earlier in the video, I do kind of like this one here that's got the, the first version that's got the more stylized, toy-like paint job for some reason. But when you try and, make him a a little more dirty and more detailed. Somehow it just doesn't work for me. But obviously this is up to the individual person. It's very subjective. Moving on to the throne, I don't really think there's much question that the new throne is superior. They're not like hugely different, but the size of these gargoyles here, it just looks silly. Especially, this looks right, looks in line with what we've seen on all sorts of other, collectibles and whatnot. And I just think there's no reason to prefer this one over the new one. Paint jobs and color-wise as well, I kind of think this one is better, although that's subjective to some degree. As for Salacious Crumb, I've already talked about how I prefer the new one, so we won't go into that in too much detail. But yeah, I'm going to give the points for Salacious Crumb to the new set. Pack-in figure, do I really even have to explain it? Oola is clearly the superior pack-in figure. 8D8 does not even appear in the throne room. He is in the palace, of course. But, Oola all the way. It is a little unfortunate that part of her outfit deteriorates over time, but that's not too hard to fix. So I would definitely say that she is superior. What else do we have? Throne decorations. Well, this is where things get a little tricky. Personally, let's just compare these here. We have one pillow from the old set and one from the new. And as you can see, this has all kinds of nice sculpted detail. It's also got some weight to it, so it'll stay where you place it. This is just, wafer thin, no detail. It doesn't look like a real pillow or real cloth. And, just doesn't really convince me that it is an in-scale, in-universe, or whatever you want to call it, pillow. Now, if we compare this with the animal skins that we get on the other one, it's a bit of a different matter. I think probably I would go with these, if we can get them in focus. I would go with the actual cloth ones, probably, if only because I've discovered that this one has a tendency, as you can see, to kind of curve, and maybe if I took a heat gun to it, it would be okay, or some hot water, but it doesn't quite sit here right. Even if I try and bend it back into place, it always ends up kind of moving, bending back the way it was, and with these actual cloth ones, you actually can place them however you like, pretty much. So, there's that. And then, there's also the matter of the other things that are included, which, we've got the 3 of these goblets, which Jabba can actually hold, although it's not easy. And this plate of food, which is actually a pretty cool accessory. I do like that a lot. So when you consider that you don't get any of that on that set, on the old set that is, it's a little tricky. I'm going to still go with the old set, to be honest with you, just because these old sculpted pillows look so nice compared to the, soft good pillows in the new one. Just not quite as good. In fact, if you look at this one here, you can see that there's actually some stripes, a stripe pattern sculpted right into it. Looks great. Nothing like that on the new ones. But what does that mean for which is the better set? Well, honestly, I don't know. I think it's kind of a draw. The thing is, the actual correct answer probably is to buy both of these and then combine the parts that you like the best. And that is, of course, the most expensive answer. But I think it makes some sense. I do really wish that this Jabba didn't have his problem with stickiness and deterioration, or otherwise I think I might actually go with the old set, although these tiny gargoyle heads do give me pause. Why don't we actually try and do that? We'll put these two sets together, all the different components that I like the best, and we'll see what that looks like. I guess you could call this my best of both worlds version. It includes what I consider to be the best parts of both of these playsets, along with my custom Jabba as well. And I think it looks really nice in this way. In fact, you could make the argument that it's worth, depending on the price, obviously, but it's worth it to get the new set to complement the old Walmart set by, just kind of sort of combining all the parts that you like into one. And I think that's not necessarily a bad idea. You'd end up with Oola and 88, whichever, Jabba and or Salacious you prefer, and you'd have a lot of options for decorating your throne as well. So, something to think about. Again, if you want a definitive answer about which is better, I'd probably just go for the newer set, because the throne is much better, and the new Jabba is certainly not bad. I think most people would be happy enough with this one. So really what you're missing out on is Oola, unfortunately. You can always get the Power of the Force version of her if you want. It's not a terrible figure. It's not quite up to modern standards in terms of articulation and so forth, but still not too bad. I'd be interested to know what your thoughts are in the comments, and thanks very much for watching this video all the way to the end. I'll see you next time.